My daughter excludes me from her wedding because a truck driver like me isn't as sophisticated as her stepfather. But now she calls me in the middle of her wedding because her mother has ruined everything out of jealousy. After raising my daughter alone for 15 years, she didn't invite me to her wedding and chose her mother's boyfriend to walk her down the aisle because I wasn't rich or sophisticated enough. On the morning of her wedding, my daughter called me in a panic because her mother had messed up big time, but this time I refused to clean up her mess. I'm sorry if I'm not doing this right. I'm new to Reddit and I'm posting because I feel really conflicted and just want honest opinions. This is about my daughter Samantha, Sam, who is 24, but I need to explain our family dynamics before getting into the reason for this post. I'm 51 and I married my ex-wife Judith, who is 49, when I was 24. We had known each other since we were kids and had always been together. Judith came from a very broken home and spent most of her days at my house. My parents treated her like family, and little by little we got closer. I had always been in love with her since I was a child. We both came from humble beginnings and built everything we had from scratch. At 24, we got married. I was a regular truck driver, couldn't afford college, and just wanted to make a living as soon as possible. Judith didn't go to college either. She worked as a waitress at a local restaurant. Between the two of us, we were comfortable. We weren't starving, but we also weren't extremely well off. Then Judith got pregnant. She decided to leave her job and focus on raising the baby. It was a financial strain on us, but it was the best possible option. We didn't have the money for daycare at the time, and I was earning more than her, so it made sense for her to stay home while I provided for the family. I switched companies, got promoted, and my salary increased, so by the time Samantha was 3 years old, we were fairly comfortable. Things were better back then, I won't lie. The country's economy was better, so we could afford much more with our limited income than anyone earning the same salary today. We were lucky because, despite being tight, things went pretty well for us. Problems started when Samantha began school. Judith started to get bored at home and said she wanted to go back to work. We had a long discussion and finally agreed that I would reduce some hours and help more around the house and she would get a job. This suited me fine because I had been working myself to death during all the years Judith stayed home. I worked 11 hours a day, 6 days a week, so when I got home, I was exhausted. I was really happy with the change because it gave me time with my daughter, and the new arrangement worked wonderfully at first. I came home at a reasonable hour and could spend time with Sam. I helped her with homework and felt like I was finally connecting with my daughter after all those years. Judith seemed happy with the change too. She was a bit distant at home, but I understood that her life had been within the four walls of our house for years, and this was her time to get out and relax. I was more than happy to take on the burden so she could have time for herself. Little did I know that while I was busy bonding with my daughter, Judith was looking for a way out of our situation. When she got a job after all those years, it wasn't at her old workplace. It was at a nice cafe frequented by wealthy people. I think being around that kind of crowd made her crave a different lifestyle. I should mention we weren't poor, but we also weren't swimming in gold. She started pushing me to work more hours and make more money, but I didn't want to because I didn't see the need. I preferred to spend time with my daughter and wife rather than slaving away for a few extra bucks that we could really do without. I don't know why or when it happened, but Judith started to resent both me and Sam. Everything came to a head a few months later when Sam was 7 years old. Judith came home late, drunk as a skunk. She had developed a drinking problem, and no amount of support or counseling could help her get out of it. She came home, and by then, I had lost all patience with her. For a long time, I had started to feel like a single dad. Judith used to come home late, and I had to do almost all the chores. I helped Sam with her schoolwork, braided her hair, and got her ready for school. There were days when Sam didn't even miss her mom because she had gotten so used to her absence. So that night was the last straw for me. I told Judith she needed to get her life together and be a mother to our daughter because I was exhausted from playing both father and mother roles. That's when she dropped the bombshell. She told me she wanted a divorce and that she had been having an affair with someone. The following days were a blur. I don't want to bore you with the details. She met someone at the cafe, they hit it off, and they had been having an affair for the past year. The guy, Steven, 60 years old, was loaded with money, and she left me for him. It hurt like hell, but at least I knew my daughter was safe, and that was what mattered most. She didn't fight for custody. She didn't even want Samantha. I just told her she could do whatever she wanted, but I didn't want her influencing Sam. That worked perfectly for her because her new boyfriend wasn't good with kids anyway. It was like she had completely changed and become someone else. She wasn't the woman I married, and she wasn't Sam's mother. Since then, it's just been Samantha and me. Judith comes and goes as she pleases, bringing expensive gifts for Sam to make up for what she could never do emotionally or physically. But all the responsibility of raising our daughter fell on me, and I tried to do the best I could. It was hard, but I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. Now, getting to the main issue, Sam has been under my care since her mother left. It wasn't ideal for either of us, but it was what it was. I tried to be there for her as much as I could. I never missed a single school meeting, didn't miss her sports events, and took her to most of her parties. I did the best I could. I knew I couldn't do much for her financially, so I tried to be a good father and be there for her. I tried to be her friend, tried to create an open environment at home. I'm not saying I didn't make mistakes, but I always tried to avoid them and do right by Sam as her only parent. However, Sam loved being with Judith. Judith married for money, and a lot of it. So she used to compensate with extravagant gifts and things that I couldn't afford. It made me feel bad because I knew I could never give my daughter what Judith could. But at the end of the day, Sam was happy, and that was what mattered most to me. However, I didn't realize that all of this was negatively influencing Sam in some way. She preferred her mother over me because she valued the material goods she received as gifts more than the everyday life we shared. Initially, I let it go because she was a child, and any child would prefer new shiny toys over the mundane. What I didn't realize, however, was that this was becoming part of her personality, and that it would continue into her adult life. When she turned 18, she told me she wanted to be a hairdresser, so I enrolled her in a hairdressing course. She worked very hard, and I was very proud of her. She got her certification and started working very soon. Since then, she started avoiding meeting with me. At first, I didn't think it was avoidance. I simply believed her when she said she was busy and respected that. She was starting out in her job, and the first few months can be tough, so I gave her some leeway. I missed her. I missed those moments when it was just the two of us. But I didn't express it to her because I didn't want her to feel guilty. She was an independent person and had every right to live a good life. What had I worked so hard for if not for that? Gradually, I started to realize that she was deliberately creating distance between us. I tried to reach out a few times and even asked if I had done something wrong, but she never revealed anything to me. We weren't distant, but we weren't very close either. I guess that's part of growing up. You drift away from your parents. It just hurt a lot because she was all I had. I never dated anyone again after my divorce from Judith. I was too busy caring for Sammy and working to find time to date. I also didn't want to create a complicated family dynamic, nor did I want her to have any resentment or complaints toward me. She was my only priority, and I was content with how my life was. My duty to my daughter was much more important to me than the loneliness I felt. However, when she started distancing herself, I felt like I had been left behind, like everyone had started new lives, while I had been here all along. I didn't know she had reconnected with her mother and had started to prefer her over me. Well, Sam is 24 now, and she got married 2 days ago. In the days leading up to the wedding, there was a lot of drama, and I acted in a way that was very uncharacteristic of me. A few weeks before the wedding, Sam told me that although I was a very important part of the wedding, she didn't want me to walk her down the aisle. It hurt a lot because I had been waiting for that moment my whole life. I tried not to react badly and simply asked her why she wanted to remove that from her wedding. She told me that she felt it was a very patriarchal tradition and didn't believe in it. I told her I respected her wishes and would be there for her in whatever capacity she wanted me to be. 2 days later, to my absolute horror, I found out that in fact there was going to be a walk down the aisle, but not with me. Her mother's boyfriend, the guy she cheated on me with, was going to walk her down the aisle. I wasn't supposed to find out. It was an accidental slip from Mark, Samantha's fiancé. I asked Samantha if it was true, but she denied it. I kept pressing, and she finally admitted that, yes, she had asked Stevens to walk her down the aisle because he wasn't a middle-class man like me. I don't think I've ever felt something hurt as much as that moment. Even my wife's infidelity didn't hurt as much. Mark tried to take the blame because he realized what he had said. He took me aside and told me that his family was a bunch of Puritans, and just to fit in with them, Sam had asked Stevens to walk her down the aisle, but it was already decided. I thanked Mark for taking her side, but I also told him that I wouldn't be attending the wedding at all. He said that would hurt Sam a lot because she loved me, but I told him I couldn't bear being disrespected by her anymore. I think Mark understood where I was coming from and didn't ask me to change my mind. I think I drank an entire bottle of whiskey that night. I was miserable and don't remember much of what happened. I blocked Samantha everywhere and told her that from now on there was no relationship between us. I don't know if she responded to that. I don't even have the heart to unblock her and check because I feel like she doesn't love me at all and doesn't care that I'm not part of her life. That was the last time I spoke to her. Samantha got married yesterday. I didn't attend, of course, but I got a call from her early in the morning, and she was hysterical. She called from a friend's phone, so I was able to talk to her. She was crying non-stop during the call, and it took me a while to understand what she was saying. She just kept repeating that her mother had ruined everything, and that she needed me to be there to fix the situation. I asked her what had happened, and she said that Judith had shown up drunk, and when I say drunk I mean very drunk, and was interacting with Mark's parents. Now, the problem is that Mark's family is very proper and doesn't appreciate any kind of vulgar behavior. Apparently, that was the reason I wasn't allowed to walk her down the aisle, because I wasn't sophisticated enough. Anyway, Judith showed up drunk and caused a huge scene, leading to a situation where Mark's parents are saying they won't attend the wedding. Sam tried to explain exactly what Judith did between sobs, but I couldn't understand her, and honestly, I wasn't very interested. She had hurt me beyond belief, and there was no going back this time. I was tired of being there for her and cleaning up her messes when she was so ashamed of me that she took away my right to walk her down the aisle. I told her that I was sorry she was going through this, but at this point and from now on, all I could offer her were words. She had chosen her family, and now she had to live with that. I told her that she had been worried about me embarrassing her, and had been so sure of her high-class mother, but in the end, that had backfired, and it was all her fault. I told her I wouldn't come to her rescue, and that she was free to do whatever she wanted. I won't lie, it killed me to say that. It felt like I had ripped my heart out of my chest, but I had to do it. I had to set my boundaries. I couldn't let her walk all over me. I had done everything I could for her. I had lived my entire life trying to make hers better, and she just saw me as something to use and feel repulsed and ashamed of. I couldn't take it anymore, and when I told her I wasn't going to help her, she started screaming over the phone, telling me that if I didn't save her this time, I wasn't her father. I simply replied that I didn't think I was her father anyway, given the way she had treated me, and I hung up the call. She called me back from the same number 15 minutes later, but I didn't answer. I was crying. I don't remember the last time I cried so much. I wanted to be there for my daughter so badly, but she had taken my heart out of my chest and stomped on it like it was nothing. My self-respect didn't allow it anymore. I don't know what has happened. I haven't contacted anyone, and Sam hasn't reached out to me either. Update 1. A lot of people have asked why I harbor so much resentment toward Judith after all these years. Well, if your heart has never been ripped out of your chest, spat on, and tossed aside like trash, you wouldn't understand. I know that she and Stevens have been together for 15 years now, and maybe they are the perfect couple, but guess what? I don't care. I don't care if they're soulmates destined to be together. What matters to me is that she chose to cheat on me and lie to me about the whole thing, instead of handling it maturely. What matters to me is that she stopped being a mother to our daughter, so I had to raise her by myself because her new man promised her a life of luxury. And what matters to me is that she used her boyfriend's money to steal my daughter from me, and she succeeded in doing so. It's because of Judith that I live a miserable life, and no, I won't be the better person and forgive her for it, not in a million years. Call me petty, call me crazy, call me an idiot, it doesn't matter. I gave her my life and I got nothing in return. To everyone who thinks she and Steven are the perfect couple, they're far from it, and that's exactly what led to the scandal at Sam's wedding. Judith showed up drunk, and before going to see Sam, she went to greet Mark's family. Samantha didn't know she had arrived, and only found out about the situation after the damage had been done. In her drunken state, Judith started flirting with Mark's father in front of Stevens and Mark's mother. It was very embarrassing. She was practically throwing herself at him. At first, everyone tried to ignore it, but things quickly got out of control. Stevens had to step in to save the situation, and had to physically pull Judith away from Mark's father. Judith was screaming at the top of her lungs, telling Stevens to let her go. He was embarrassed too and kept apologizing, but by then, a huge scene had already been made. At that moment, Samantha arrived, but that wasn't the end. Stevens and Judith started arguing, with Judith initiating the fight. She accused him of being a hypocrite, saying that if he could have affairs with other women, she should have the same freedom. Stevens' jaw dropped. He told her to keep quiet, but she didn't listen, and it turned into a huge verbal explosion between the two of them. From what I heard, and I mean what Judith revealed to the entire wedding party in her drunken state, their relationship has had many problems. Steven keeps cheating on her with various women, and she knows it, but tries to act indifferent or ignorant because she can't afford to break up with him. He's given her a life of comfort and luxury, and she can't give that up right now, so she keeps tolerating his infidelities. She's also been pressuring him to marry her, but he doesn't want to, God knows why. Every time a fight arises between them, he appeases her by giving gifts and buying things for Samantha. Judith unloaded all her marital problems right there. Stevens kept telling her that it wasn't the time or place to discuss their issues, but it was no use. She continued in a full-blown rage, hitting his chest, grabbing his hair, and more. The situation was so bad that if it hadn't been stopped, the police would have been called. Stevens has scratches on his face, and in his defense, he pushed her. She was so drunk that she fell over some chairs and onto a guest from Mark's side. This whole drama happened at the wedding venue, where almost all the guests had already arrived. The entire spectacle was witnessed by everyone. Mark's parents were deeply embarrassed and were about to leave because they couldn't tolerate this humiliation. They had many friends and family present at the wedding, and seeing all this family nonsense was something they just couldn't comprehend. It was at this point that Samantha called me and begged me to come save her, and I said no. By the time we talked and hung up, Stevens and Mark's parents had left. Mark ran after them and tried to get them to come back, but to no avail. Some of the guests from Mark's side left as well. They're probably going to cut contact with Samantha, and honestly, I don't blame them. Judith simply sat on the damn floor and started howling, saying how she had ruined her life and couldn't believe she was going to spend the rest of her years with a cheater while her daughter was marrying a good guy. So honestly, I think all of this wasn't an accident or a drunken mistake. I genuinely believe Judith is so narcissistic that she planned this to deliberately sabotage her daughter's happiness, simply because she never got that happiness for herself. The wedding was an absolute disaster, and Mark is angry. He hasn't been speaking to Samantha, and she's miserable. She sent me an email detailing everything that happened, apologizing for her behavior, but the apology also came with the blame that I should have gone when she called me, and that it was my duty as her father to have been there, taken her side, and tried to make things right again. I haven't responded, and I don't think I will, though I have a lot to say. But there's no point in saying anything because I know she won't understand my perspective or my feelings. So, it's time for me to protect myself. She's hurt me enough, and now I need to take space for myself. I've been selfless my entire life. I've thought of others and never put myself first, but I haven't received the same in return. So now, it's time to prioritize myself. Maybe I'll end up telling her that I need space and that I'll get in touch with her if I feel like it, but for now, that's the most I can do. I don't think I'll be updating further because I want this chapter of my life to end. I want to bang my head against the wall with sadness every time I think about what happened between Sam and me. But I think it's karma that has come back to bite her in the ass, and on the most important day of her life too. She was worried that Mark's parents wouldn't like me, which is why Judith and Stevens were her preferred parents. But in the end, it was they who humiliated and embarrassed her so much that she can't even look at her in-laws. And it was me she had to turn to for help to save the situation. Update 2. For everyone expecting a dramatic update, I'm sorry to disappoint, but there haven't been any surprising events. A lot of you were hoping that Mark would leave Samantha, but that hasn't happened either. They are still together. If they've had disagreements, I don't know, and I don't want to know. Those are problems between a husband and wife, and they should stay that way. I have no intention of meddling in their lives, and I know I'm not welcome anyway. Even if I were, I don't want to be part of Samantha's life. I've done my duty as best as I could, and now I'm stepping back. I didn't reply to her email. I thought I would. But I realized that even an attempt to ask her to give me space and respect my boundaries would be met with guilt and criticism from her. So, it was literally pointless. In other news, I've joined a motorcycle club in my city, and we meet once a week for drinks. I've made a few friends there, and it feels good to have people to talk to. One of the guys even pushed me to make a dating app profile. He's a young guy, but he seems like a good one. They're all younger than me, so they try to keep me up to date with new things the younger generation is doing. It's pretty entertaining. They set me up with a profile on Boomly and keep asking me if I've matched with anyone. One of them is coming over today to show me how to talk to women and get dates. I feel a little nervous. Honestly, I've never done this in my life, but it's also exciting. I have friends, a social circle, and something to look forward to. I'd rather have my daughter with me and my family back, but I guess we don't always get what we want, and I need to accept that. If I do get a date, I'll tell you how it goes. Please leave some tips in the comments for this old man. Update 3. I have my first date today. I met her on a dating app. It's with a woman named Casey, obviously not her real name. She got divorced a few years ago because her ex-husband was a big mama's boy, and her ex-mother-in-law kept interfering in their relationship. She finally got fed up and said goodbye. There's nothing serious between us right now, we're just meeting for drinks. We've been talking for a while and I like her a bit. It feels good to talk to a woman and get attention. I've been so starved for that feeling for most of my life. Even during my marriage, Judith wasn't really the expressive or affectionate type, so this is a nice and surprising change for me. God, I feel so stupid having a crush in my 50s, but she's a beautiful, kind woman. I hope the date goes well. My friends have been prepping me for it, and they're even more excited than I am. They came over last night to finalize my outfit for the date. I didn't even know that was so important, but then again, I'm basically an old man now. They've given me a list of do's and don'ts to memorize. All my friends are waiting for the date to end so I can tell them the details. I'm excited too. It feels good to feel young again, to have friends, and to have a life that's not just about responsibilities, but also about fun. I've missed this, and I hope this feeling lasts a long time because I've craved it for as long as I can remember. Update 4. I didn't think many people would care how my date went, but some of you have asked and even wished me luck, so here's my update. The date went very well. We were initially just going to have drinks, but we ended up having dinner and staying late chatting at a cafe. I thought it was going to be harder, but it was the opposite. Casey and I hit it off really well, and that's important. We talked about our lives, and it was really easy to talk to her. So, we'll definitely be having a second date soon since we both felt very comfortable. I know this because this morning, after the date, she texted me saying she had a great time with me. So, we'll probably go out again this weekend. I also have some updates about my daughter Samantha, although not many. I know she has finally split from Mark. This morning I received another email from Samantha saying that Mark's family is ashamed of hers and that they don't approve of the marriage. They've had some arguments with Mark and finally decided to separate. If you ask me, I think Mark left her, but the only version of the story I know is that she also blamed me for not fixing any of it. I don't feel guilty, as it's not my problem. I don't see myself as Samantha's father. I was for a while, but she chose to cut me out of her life, so she should ask Stevens to fix her problems now. Right. He was part of the problem. Either way, I haven't responded to that email either because I'm not interested. But I thought it was interesting to share this new information, since you've all been here for me. In the end, I guess Judith got what she wanted, to ruin Samantha's life so that her own wouldn't feel as bad. Update 5. I don't know how many people will remember my story, but for those who don't, I'll give a brief recap. About 5 years ago, I had an issue with my daughter, who preferred her wealthy stepfather to walk her down the aisle instead of me. Then she called me to fix a problem at the wedding, but I refused to go. Well, today I've returned after all this time just to say that I've married Casey. We had been dating for a few years, and it was the next step in our relationship. A month ago, we had our wedding, and everything went very well. I didn't invite my daughter or my ex, from whom I haven't heard much in a while. I know my daughter has married another man, but as far as I know, he's not as wealthy as the one she was supposed to marry in my original post. I don't know who he is since I wasn't invited to the wedding, but it hasn't bothered me this time. That weekend, Case and I went on a getaway, and honestly, I didn't think much about it. As for Judith, she finally split from Stevens, but I don't know the details either, just rumors I've heard, and little else. I hope all of you, especially those who still remember me and have helped me, have a good life as well. I love you all.